Hello folks, here we are, August 4th, 1996, kind of late isn't it, 10 o'clock p.m. But we're going to do a videotape of John and Arminda Sanders and give them a chance to give us a little bit of their life right here on videotape. And we're going to work right through this. And John has been kind enough to volunteer Arminda to go first. So we'll do it, won't we?
Yes, we will.
That's what we'll do. So Arminda, I always forget your other name.
Eva.
What is it? Eva. Eva Arminda Ramage, originally.
That's spelled ear.
Spelled what?
E-A-R, ear.
Is it?
Your ear.
It is. Well, that's interesting. I never thought of that either. And you were born when and where?
I was born November the 11th, 1927, in Lyon County, Kentucky. Right now, that's DeMumbers Campground.
Right, right. And your mom and dad were?
Addie Grace Stafford Ramage. St. Bailey Ramage was my dad.
Right. Why don't we do your grandparents while we're at it, you know.
Okay.
Can you remember those old?
Papa's dad was Alfred Lucian Ramage. His mother was Sarah Ramage, but she went by Sadie.
Uh-huh.
Mama's parents were William. No, I'm sorry about that. Stafford. I believe it was William. I may be wrong about that though.
I can't help you.
And his Mama's mother was Maggie, and she was a. Let me see. She was a Dicus. That's right. Richard. Thank you.
Okay, that's good. So you of course, being in the same family as Roy, whom we happen to have just done previous to this tonight, grew up part of your life up in the Lyon County area.
We moved to McCracken County when I was 6 years old.
Well, right. But
6 years old in November, and we moved in April down here at 34.
But you have some memories up there. Why don't you toss us a few?
Okay. I guess about the first thing I remember was where we lived there that was DeMumbers, is DeMumbers Bay now, campground. And Uncle Lee and Aunt Beulah lived up on the hill from us, and their children would come down to play there. And I can remember us playing in that yard, and then I remember Mom and Papa had a horse, and I would ride it, and I was just, of course we left there when I was 6 years old, and I remember I'd climb up on a gate to get on the horse and ride. But then when we moved to McCracken County, we no longer had that horse. I guess they sold it, and that was the end of my horseback riding.
I think they had mules after
they
that,
did.
and they were
Yes.
fun to ride.
That's right.
So did you go to school up there, Minda, or
I went just a little, Richard.
Well,
I didn't really go regularly.
well,
I was little for my age, and so see, I went some, which would have been, it was the first grade. But when we moved from there in the spring of 34, that was the year I had been going some in first grade. And they started me then in the first grade at Paducah, so I was 7 in the first grade that November.
I
But
see.
I would have, I think, you know, they thought I could have gone on into the second grade, but my family didn't want me to go in the second grade.
Well, they were afraid you would have missed something, I presume. Well,
I was real small, and I was a baby.
yes, you were the youngest in the family, in a pretty large family.
Youngest of, there was really 8, see,
Right.
with Laureen that died.
Right, right. Do you remember the move itself? I mean, the actual move?
Yes, I do.
And were you sort of sorry to be moving, or excited that you're going to some nice new place, or what?
It was mixed feelings,
Right.
because we were leaving like Uncle Lee and Aunt Beulah and their children that were my playmates. And then, too, I was excited about coming down here to Paducah, where Grandma Ramage and all of the aunts and uncles lived, a lot of them. And so but I remember us coming. We rode in the truck that hauled the furniture. Papa and some of the boys I think, drove the team and the wagon and brought some of the farm equipment. Of course, they got down to where we moved to a lot later than we did in that truck, you know.
Did they take like all day? They left early and got there that night, I presume?
Believe they did.
We're talking about maybe 25 or 30 miles.
I think it would have been 30 maybe,
yeah.
between the rivers, you know, up in there, down here.
Right. Well, so when you got here, you moved into the place on Clarks River Road, sort of on the bank of the Tennessee River.
Yes, Papa and Newman and the boys that helped farm, they farmed that river ground that was along the Tennessee River.
Behind the house.
We moved in Irie Byerly's farmhouse there, and there was some land there. Papa leased it or rented it.
And you started school then at what? Not Farley, but
at Farley.
Oh, you did.
Had to walk. It was a mile or over. Christine was 5 years older than me, and she and I went to school together.
Right.
And walked.
Well.
Then she got old enough to go on to Reedland. I think she was in the 7th grade, and then you went to 8th grade, and then you went to Reedland. So she left me, see, and I was left alone to go after, I guess, about the 3rd grade. And I was walking some, but Lee Ray bought me a bicycle, and I was so proud of that bicycle to ride to Farley School.
That's good. Now it's 10 o'clock.
Yes, it is.
And so you grew up there and were there right through your teen years at that house, as I recall.
We left there when I was 12.
Not at that house, but in that vicinity.
Yes, we went to Reedland, Richard, where you all were living too.
Exactly, right.
And I went to school at Reedland. The 8th grade, at that time, they sent the 8th grade to Reedland. So I went the 8th grade to Reedland instead of Farley. And then I went the 4 years of high school and graduated in 1946 from Reedland.
Well. And Christine, of course, being older than you, had already graduated from high school?
Yes, she was 5 years older, see, so that made her.
Right. You liked school?
Oh, yes, I sure did.
Did Christine like school
yes,
and do
did.
well?
She was a good student, too. Well, she really was.
And gregarious.
She graduated from Reedland.
And popular and what have you?
Yes.
Well.
We, of course, I was very interested in cheerleading. I never made it, but I really wanted to be. Well. And I always got so much excitement out of the the basketball games. Reedland didn't have football.
No, it was basketball, and that's all. That was all. But that was enough, I guess, because it was very exciting.
Yes.
That's good. Well, of course, eventually you graduated, and then at what point did you then get a job, or how did it go then? In 46 you graduated.
Yes.
What happened then?
I graduated in April. Back then, that's when school was out.
I see.
And I didn't get a job right off that summer, but sometime during the summer, I had put in my application at different places, and Sears Roebuck called and wanted me to come down there, and they hired me. And I went to work at Sears. And I worked there, of course, was working there when I met John.
Well.
No, I had met John previously, but that's when I started going with him.
I see. So you were working as a clerk or what have you at Sears? Well.
All over the store. They used me as an extra, and I'd move around from one department to another, so you had to learn all the merchandise. It was kind of hard to be an extra.
Right.
Because you weren't familiar with the department, you know?
Exactly. Well, that brings us to this John. Who's John? Oh, John.
I don't know that fella.
Now, we'll let you rest a minute and pick on John for a while. So we're going to come back to that little meeting later. But John Sanders. John what Sanders?
John Y.
John Y.
Tell him what the Y
How do you
stands.
spell that, John?
It's John Young.
John Young Sanders. Okay, well, let's go through that routine for the sake of, record of your parents, and if you can think some of record.
I was born October 15, 1923 in Lyon County. And my parents were Tommy and Charlene Sanders. And My grandparents on my father's side was John and Mattie Sanders,
Okay.
and grandparents on my mother's side was Mike and Charlene Chandler.
Okay.
And
So your mother was a Chandler
My
before
mother
she
was a-
married.
was a Chandler, yes.
Right. Well. Okay. And you were born in Lyon County, but not in the vicinity of Arminda's.
No, I was
growing up.
I was on the Katoa side, what they termed in as the bend of the rivers.
I see. And how far away are we talking about? Several miles or a lot of miles
From where?
from Arminda's birthplace? And,
Well, if you go across the lake, it's only about 3 miles.
I see. Okay.
There was a ferry
But
that used they would
but if you,
Go there.
I'm talking about straight across the lake. But if you had to go up to the ferry, well,
Quite a long distance.
well, it was a couple mile up and 2 or 3 mile down,
Hmm.
5 or 6 miles, something
Right.
like that.
Right. But by the time you got even mildly interested in girls, she was gone out of there anyway.
Yes.
Right. Okay.
see, I
Because when
left
she
there when I
left
was
at
6
6,
years
you
old.
would have been 10.
That's right.
Okay. And no self-respecting 10-year-old wants to, think anything about girls yet.
That's right.
Or at least not back then.
No.
I guess now, maybe. Not back then. So you grew up there doing what, John?
Well,
on a farm?
my dad farmed,
Yeah.
yes. He raised row crops, and he raised cattle and hogs, and
Had some sheep.
we had sheep, and we milked cows,
Yeah.
and
Had a cream separator.
oh yeah, we had the cream separator and all.
Did you do a little bit of all this when you got old enough?
I've done a little of all of it.
Yeah, yeah. And I presume, like most of us and Arminda and all of her family, when you were fairly young, you started getting into it a little.
I always had chores.
Yeah, right, right. And increasingly important ones as you got older, of
That's
course.
right.
So you went to school though from a normal age,
I
and
went,
through what?
I went through grades, first 8 grades at MacPhail at a one-room school.
Uh-huh.
Then I went through high school at Katoa.
Okay.
And graduated.
Well,
Graduated in 41.
well,
And
41 put you in nice shape for an event that was going on that might pull you away from
yeah,
Lyon County.
I went in the Navy in 42 and stayed there until after the war was over. I got out in 46.
Right. What did you do there?
I was a radio operator
You were on a
On a
ship.
ship.
on a ship.
Right.
Yeah.
Destroyer.
Right.
I spent most of my time on a destroyer
Yeah.
or a can.
There's a very interesting picture of you on one of those, and if we had a little more time to get it together, we'd probably show that right now. See?
Uh-huh.
But whoever watches this video can ask
About
to
the
see
picture.
that
Just about it.
picture.
Okay.
That's
You
right.
standing there on that ship, getting your picture made.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have one. Okay.
So you were on that ship or a ship?
That ship.
That same ship for.
When I first went in, of course, I went through boot camp, and then I went to Northwestern University at Evanston. Went through radio school.
I see.
Came out of radio school. I went on the ship. Then we went. First, we went to the Atlantic and went across the pond to England. And about 2 or 3 days after we got there, we had to come back to the States for repairs. We came back to the States for repairs, then went to the Pacific.
I see.
Stayed there till the war was over.
Did you have any narrow escapes or scares or anything like that?
I was scared by the time I got on till I got off.
But he was in the thick of it, Richard. You need to tell him about it.
Well,
we
there
saw-
was a problem crossing the Atlantic early on
We
with submarines, but
we had our share of them, the submarines, and then that in the Atlantic and the Pacific both. But I don't know, as I said, we came back to the state for repairs. We took an 8-inch shell off of Normandy the second day we were there.
Oh, so you were back for repairs, not just because you had a breakdown, you were actually...
We were back for repairs.
Yeah, okay, I got you. Well, that's exciting.
Then we went to the Pacific, and as I say, we stayed there until we made Iwo Jima, Okinawa, and a few of those.
Fantastic.
We took the Missouri into Tokyo Bay when she went in.
Is that right?
And,
To end the war?
yeah, took it in for
Yeah.
sign the peace.
Yeah, to sign the peace.
They signed the
exactly.
peace on her.
Well, that's interesting. When you were in Okinawa, offshore Okinawa, that's where, if I recall properly, the kamikazes were doing their thing. You weren't.
We pulled radar picket duty there. It's just, you'd be out about 50 miles, and that's where you saw most of them.
I see.
We had some narrow escapes, but we were fortunate.
Well, that's good. I'd never heard that story. Had you heard that story?
Yes, he's got
Yeah.
it, but he doesn't tell everybody very much.
Well,
you know, he never has. But
it's,
I've heard him.
yeah,
I've asked
yeah.
him questions, and he'd tell me a little bit.
Right.
You know.
Well, it's the same
And
way
I'm-
with Uncle Rubel.
That's right.
He had never told a lot of these stories until we did the tape. And quite frankly, I believe he told something, if I recall right, that Charlene hadn't heard him tell even.
Probably
But
so.
they typically don't talk about
they
this a
don't.
lot, and I appreciate you sharing. And,
I'm glad he did
it's
too,
good.
Richard.
Right, right. Well, that brought you then in 1946 out of service, and Arminda out of high school.
Right.
And so, how did it happen? Minda, let's go back to you. What happened to
Okay.
bring you to each other's attention, okay?
Well,
Go ahead.
the first time I met Arminda was, I believe, before I went into service.
Sure
Oh.
was. I wasn't old enough to even date. He went to the
Right.
war, and I grew up.
I see.
Was Christine and Linda Lou and Leon
And I.
were up there, and they were
It
up
ain't
at the house.
Levadas.
And
I
y'all were up
see.
at the house.
And they were neighbors.
I
Good
see.
friends and neighbors. The Sanders and the Aunt Levada and Uncle Bennett Dicus.
Right.
So we went to their house to play rook. One night they invited us. See, John's sister Neely and I were the same age. And I wasn't old enough to date, but I had him picked out.
Well,
I knew just as well. He went through the war. I, of course, dated other boys all that time, but all the time I still kept thinking about him, Richard.
well,
And his mom, I went to visit Aunt Levada again, just me, and she said, could I send your name and address to John? And so I said, well, yes. And she did, and he wrote me, but he was soon going to be coming home, see, for
I
the
see.
discharge.
I see.
When he came home, he came to see me.
Well,
And it just hit, that's the beginning of it.
Yeah.
We married, that was in the spring of 46, and we married in December of 46,
Well.
Christmas Day.
right. But you hadn't corresponded during most of the war.
No.
Not
Right.
during any of it to speak
Well,
It was,
of.
I think it was
Until
about,
very
just
late.
about over.
I see. Well, that's interesting. That's good. So you dated for a few months and set a date and married in December, did you say?
Christmas Day of 46.
Well,
We
Christmas
started
Day.
dating that late spring because he came to see me when he came home to be discharged. He got a furlough and came back home, and then you went to be discharged, didn't you, John?
I believe that's right.
Well,
And he came by to see me when he was still, not really discharged. We lived there on the Clarks River Road at the Dennington house.
Right.
And anyway, he said he'd be back to see me, and then, of course, he went to St. Louis to work. So he wrote me,
Oh.
but he would come home pretty often on a Greyhound bus on the weekend. Come here to Paducah and back on a Greyhound bus. And
Well,
so we just hit it off. Loved each other from the beginning.
That's good. Well, so you got out of service. You didn't want to enlist and make a career.
No, I had no desire to stay.
And so you went to, you looked here in this area for a job, or you heard of something up there?
I didn't look here. I just,
Well.
my brother was working in St. Louis.
I see.
I went out there and went to work.
Well, was this at a, so what kind of job?
I went to work Carter Carburetor.
Okay, so it wasn't
Factory.
related to your experience in the service
No,
in any way?
No, not in any way.
Yeah.
And I don't know, I worked there till after we married, and then we moved back to
A
Paducah.
few months, really, not too long.
So
Well, I had worked there most of the summer.
where did you get married then, actually? Here in Paducah?
At Oakline Baptist
I see.
Church, but we didn't have a church wedding. We had our attendants to go with us, and we went to the church, and Frank Young married us.
Right.
And we didn't even go to the altar. We went to the pastor's study, and we had our, the man and woman that went with us, and
Witnesses.
the family was all waiting at home to have a big,
I see.
supper, I call
Right,
it, instead of
right.
dinner. But anyway,
Yeah.
and you were there, Richard.
Well.
And so that's the way that went. We were married, in the study of the church.
Yeah. Was this up during the day since it was Christmas Day?
Yes, it was at 4
uh,
o'clock in the
well,
afternoon.
Well,
And then we spent our honeymoon at the Cobb Hotel in the bridal suite
I
on the
see.
6th floor.
well,
See, he was working in St. Louis, didn't have a car, and we married, and his friend Punk Sadler from Lyon County, his good friend, was his attendant, and they took us down to the Cobb Hotel and put us out. And we stayed there that night. The next morning we got a cab and went out to Mom and Papa's out at the Dennington place.
right.
And
And,
then we went to see his mom and dad at Lyon County, down below Catawba. And then we caught the Greyhound bus and went to St. Louis, and he had an apartment rented, furnished. And we lived there in that furnished apartment. It was kind of like a suite. It was just a huge living room. It had a bed that pulled down out of the wall, and a couch all in the, big, like a sitting room.
Right.
And a little small kitchenette.
Well,
And I didn't know how to cook, but I learned, and John suffered.
Not too bad.
not too bad. No.
No, not too bad.
Well, that's good. How long did you live there then?
Just a few months.
A few months, and you saved up thousands of dollars and bought a new car and drove it.
No,
back
that's
here.
not the way the story goes, Richard.
Not so fast, huh?
John,
You-
you tell about us coming back to Paducah. You got
Yeah.
who you
Well,
went to
you
work
go ahead.
for. Well, I think Papa and different ones talked to Uncle Ernest. He had the Paducah Maytag store. So Uncle Ernest said for John to come down there, and he gave him a job.
I see.
And John, you even went to school some, didn't you, about maybe motors for small motors or something?
Oh, yeah. So,
And worked for Uncle Ernest for several years, he did. And so we, lived in Paducah. We had a furnished apartment. Then we moved to Oakdale. We moved around a lot,
Right. Right.
but I'll let him tell some more.
Tell me about your first car. You eventually got off of that bus
Well,
travel, right?
while I was going with Arminda, of course, Dad kept pickup truck all the time. We done most of our courting in a quick pickup truck.
Yes, we did.
Well,
So it wasn't actually as bad as
Sounded.
it sounded maybe. But no, I don't know, we hadn't been in Paducah very long till I bought a 39 Ford.
okay.
And then drove it a few years and got a 50 Ford. Drove it a while, and then, well, all we've ever owned is Fords.
Is that right? Well, that's interesting.
We had a hard way to go because we didn't have any money when we got married.
Right.
And we just counted our pennies, and
Yeah.
we made it, but we did have a hard way to go at first, for
Right.
several years.
The Depression was over, but it still wasn't easy for
No, it wasn't.
couples
For anyone.
starting out.
Mhm.
when you started out, and for anyone really. I mean, unless you were independently wealthy or your family
That's
could,
right.
could help you get a start. That's very true. Well, so you worked at the we called it the Maytag store.
I worked there, I don't know, what, how long?
I don't know, but I'd say 3 or 4 years maybe.
Probably about 3 years.
Well, and you continued working at
At
Sears store.
uh-huh.
Yeah. Did you work there right on through until Suzanne was born? Or at
No,
what point did you
no.
quit?
I think I worked part-time, and then I got to where I wasn't in very good health for a while there, Richard.
Well,
And they didn't want me to work. It was kind of my nerves, and they didn't much want me to work. And
see.
so John, he told me he thought it was best I not work. So I quit work at Sears, and then we got to expecting our baby, Suzanne,
Right.
and she was born in 51. And then I worked some part-time after she was past 5 years old before I ever worked anymore.
I
and
see.
I worked some just extra at Sears part-time.
well,
Then we left Paducah in 61, went to Owensboro, but you can tell about, you changed jobs. You were with a gas company.
yeah.
Yeah.
Did you decide that the repair washing machine and stuff was
Well,
not-
I don't know, it just didn't work out, maybe. I guess I should say that,
Uncle Ernest died, didn't he?
yeah, but no,
Well-
I left before he died.
Okay.
Well,
And I went out, they was building the plant. I went out there and worked a while on
out at
construction.
the atomic
Yeah.
plant in other side of town.
And then when that was finished, I went to work for the gas company, for National Gas.
Uh-huh.
I stayed with them and several years, and then, well, I stayed with them for a long time, and then I was transferred to Owensboro and worked for them there about 7 years or something like that. And they wanted to transfer me again, and I didn't much want to go, so I went up to chemical plant and went to work
Where were they going to send you this time after Owensboro?
south,
Way
probably
south?
down in Louisiana somewhere.
Yeah, right. Well,
And they turned it down 2 or 3 times, and so time to leave.
yeah,
We didn't want to go that far away. Our
Right.
parents were getting older every
Right.
year, and I mean getting on up in years, and we
Right.
didn't want to go that much farther away from them.
Right.
We wanted to come back closer to home, really.
Right.
And it was,
So I worked up the chemical plant a couple of years, and seen an ad in the paper. They was wanting maintenance men at Calvert City at SKW. Well, it was Airco then,
alloys.
and
uh-huh.
I called Doris Odell, and he said to come down and talk to him. So I went down there, and before I left, I'd done had my physical and told him when I'd come to work.
Well,
So I had to go back and quit, give them notice, and then come. Then we put her house up for sale, and I came on to work, and I don't know, the house sold in a couple of weeks, didn't it, or less. And then Arminda and Suzanne, we rented a place up at Lake City for about a year, wasn't it?
Yes, it was a year.
And
We came from Owensboro in 70 and
while
got
we
our
was-
house ready in
while we
71.
was building our house up on the lake at Catawba.
uh-huh.
We need to go back and tell a little bit about Suzanne, though.
Yeah, we're going to get her in
Okay.
here a
I
little
mean,
bit.
though, even in her, like her living
Yeah.
in Owensboro,
Yeah,
okay?
that's right. At what, she was born when you lived where?
We lived where Mama and Papa and where Leroy and Ruthie live right now, Bill May's mother's home. We
Okay.
rented it from her, Miss Thomason.
I see.
And Suzanne was born at Riverside Hospital,
But
but
you lived
when
there.
we took her home from the
Right.
hospital, that's where we took her.
Well, okay,
Then we built a garage apartment on Milliken Road,
I
across the
remember that.
road from Charlene and Rubel.
right.
We lived there 5 years, and then we bought a home in Paducah on Clay Street, 2220 Clay. We lived there till Suzanne was 10. She was 5 when we moved there, and when she was 10, we moved to Owensboro. So she started in the 4th grade in Owensboro and went through the 12th while we lived there. and went off to college at Western Kentucky at Bowling Green. And so then she stayed there 2 years, but she met Dick, and they fell in love and married, and he was out of state on a football scholarship, I think, and he hurt his knee. And so he quit football, and see, he was out of state and paying tuition if he had to after that scholarship was no longer.
And more tuition because he was out of state.
So anyway, he married Suzanne and took her, and they got the rest of their college at UT at Knoxville.
I see. Well, well, that's
But you
good.
might want to go back to something else.
They both graduated from
University
UT.
of Tennessee at Knoxville.
Yeah.
Then she went on a little later, and she went on and got her master's.
Mm-hmm.
She did that after Alan was born.
Well,
I said later. You know.
so you have one grandkid,
Alan.
Alan.
He's 19 years old. He was 19 the 10th of July. He was born in 1977. And he's been through 1 year of college, and he'll be, in his second year now, when school starts in about 2 or 3 weeks.
Good.
He went his first year at Murray, but he's going to PCC this year.
Well,
I think his mom and dad want him to stay home, I believe, and go at least another year,
well, that's
But
good.
you might want to go back or something on something.
Well, yeah, we've got several things we want to kind of catch up here. We're not quite done.
Okay.
But you have been married how long now? What have you celebrated your anniversary? What was the last one in December? Christmas last year was what?
49.
49.
Gonna have that big 50
For
this
sure.
Christmas.
Well, that's good. I'm sure you could say, like Roy and Opal, been lots of ups and downs, but more
That's
ups
true.
than downs, I'm sure.
But we've always loved each other, and everything has turned out all right. We've been blessed because we've had very little really hardships.
Well,
Really. Our health has been pretty good, really.
good.
What'd you start to say, John?
I just going to say that we both enjoyed pretty good health.
And Suzanne has been healthy, and Alan.
Yeah. Well, that's
And
that's
Dick, we've
good.
got a wonderful son-in-law, Dick
Yeah.
Thomas. He's from Oak Ridge, Tennessee.
Oh,
He came to Western, on a scholarship, and Suzanne met him through a friend of hers from Owensboro that played football, and he introduced Dick to Suzanne.
well,
So that was love at, I guess, first sight. It must have been.
you all go to church all the time. Most of the Ramages, a lot of the Ramages have, as I've interviewed them and I
Yes.
know them, of course. Where did you go? Oaklawn
Yes,
early on, and then when you married, you were down in this area, so you both went there for your
Yes, when
early
we-
married life.
When we moved to Paducah, and I was 6 years old, my family everybody went to Oaklawn.
Well,
And when I was 13 years old, I was saved and joined the church there. So
There.
when I married
Right.
John, and we moved back from St. Louis, we went, started back to church at Oaklawn, I did, and John went with me. And he was saved in a revival and baptized there.
well,
And of course, we've had our membership in several churches.
Wherever we've lived,
changed it. Yeah.
we've always moved our
Right.
membership.
Right. Were you a Baptist in your family up in Catawba
No, I
area?
was raised a Methodist.
I see. Well,
But we've always had lots of good friends in all of our churches because we moved from Oaklawn into Paducah to Tabernacle, where Aunt Gold and Uncle Pete were, and we enjoyed that church. And then we moved to Owensboro, and we were members at Third Baptist, and it was a big church, but it was, they were friendly, and we enjoyed that. And then when we moved down to Lake City and we're going to build our house, we moved our membership to Grand Rivers Baptist Church. We lived there 1 year. When we built our house, we moved our membership to Catawba
well,
First Baptist.
right.
And then when we moved here, we are now members of Hard Money Baptist
I
Church.
see. I see. Well,
So we've made a lot of friends where we've gone. There's always good people everywhere you go.
absolutely. Yeah, it's not where you live, it's what quality you make of your life where you are.
To be a friend, you have to, I mean, to have a friend, you have to be a
To be
friend.
one. Indeed. Here's an interesting question that might be at any rate. What do you, tell me some memory, either one of you first, it doesn't matter, you cherish about either of your parents or both of your parents, because your grandchild or great-grandchild or children, if you have some sooner or later, might want to ask that question because they wouldn't have known them. You know what I mean?
Yes.
So can you tell just any little story that would shed some light on your parents?
John,
You know,
you want to go
little-
first?
some little story. It can be, you know, anything humorous or serious or just something human interest, you know?
Well, I don't know that I can really think of anything in particular, but, you know, being 7 of us children, and Mom and Papa had 7 children, and me being the youngest, my memories, fond memories, are when my brothers and sisters were grown. I guess is when I remember so well, and them all, each one getting married. And I'd look forward to them coming home, even like at night, to visit a while. Mom
Right.
and Papa and I would be there, you know.
Right.
And they'd come in, and that was such a happy time. And I can remember when we lived on the Byerly place on Clarks River Road, and W.D. and Violet would come a lot. And they had a croquet set, and we didn't have one. And Mom and Papa had the cow, and W.D. and Violet would bring the ice. And Mama would milk the
Okay.
cow, and we'd make ice cream and play croquet.
Well,
And I was a little girl, but I sure looked forward to all that happening.
well,
And I always just loved for all of them to come home, because, see, I was left there alone after they all married off.
right.
And
Well,
when you
that's good.
came along, Richard, you're just 7 years younger
I
than
know
me,
it.
and
I
you're
know
the
it.
first, Mom and Papa's first grandchild. And oh me, I loved you and worshipped you, and we played together. When you
Right.
got up, you know, large enough to play, well, we really played together, and I looked on you as like a brother because of our 7 years difference in our age.
Well, we lived actually in the same house
Yes, we
occasionally,
did.
and maybe not for a long time, but at times.
Yes, we did.
And I considered you protector, you know,
Okay.
and big sister, like you said, you know. That was excellent. My grandpa, your dad, and my grandma, your mom, did not have it easy.
Oh no, they didn't.
He worked farming long hours, hard, physical, walk behind plow,
That's right.
you know, and Mama, we called her, had to wash clothes by boiling water in a
That's
kettle
right.
and all that. It was very difficult for
When
them.
she told me, when she lived up in, you know, the land between the lakes now, between the rivers, that she had her kettle, wash kettle, to heat her water down at the creek.
Well,
And she would go down there because they'd get out of water in the summertime.
right.
And she'd go down there and wash, where she'd get that water, and she'd build up a fire under her kettle. And she would hang some of the clothes just on little bushes to dry. Some of the better ones, I think she'd take them all the way back up the hill to the house and hang them up. But I don't remember much about it. But see, when I was left at home with Mama and Papa, and the rest of them were all gone, they talked to me a lot.
Right.
And there was a lot of things they'd tell me that maybe the other children had already lived it, but I hadn't, because
That's right.
I was
You
the
had to
last
learn it
one.
by
And I
telling.
had to learn it from
Right.
Mom and Papa, and they told me a lot like that.
Right.
And they always taught me for us to love each other and stay together.
Well, it certainly was taken, because that's what's happened. That's good. I remember each of them, of course, and my grandmother as a very kind and tender person,
She was.
and very loving and giving to me, particularly as a grandkid. You know,
Yes.
whatever you want, you know. But they didn't have a lot to give.
No.
I'm talking about little things.
Mostly
you know.
love.
That's right. And after all, that's more important than just about anything else, really. And Grandpa was not one to talk a lot
No.
around me. He wasn't demonstrative. And,
No, he wasn't.
But he was soft-spoken,
Yes.
and I thought, to me, particularly kind.
Mm-hmm.
You know.
Well, he had a temper.
Well, he did that. He did that.
You know, because after
Especially
all,
when
I
it came
guess
to
all we Ramages do.
when it came to those mules, he could tell them a thing or two and get them lined out.
Richard, has anyone told about Christine?
A couple of times I asked about that story, and I was told on
Well,
tape.
see, I was with
But
her.
you were, and I think that is appropriate. Let's come to that after I get back
okay.
from John's note
His
here
favorite
about
memories.
what you remember about your parents, John. Okay,
Well,
have you had time to think of something? It doesn't matter in what direction.
I had a brother and a sister. My brother was 4 years older than me. My sister was 4 years younger.
Uh-huh.
And I don't know, I guess probably the most memorable times was like around Christmas when we were growing up. We didn't get a whole lot, but we enjoyed what we got.
Right.
And I would say that's probably,
Tell about your Christmas tree, because we didn't do it that way. I want you to.
oh, we would always have a real tree, and we had real candles. We put real candles on it. We had candle holders that you put them
Right. Clip on.
on, clip on.
Yeah. I've
You had
heard
to
of
watch
those.
them pretty close. You burn the house down.
I know, I've heard that.
But we never had any problem with setting anything on
Well,
fire.
you didn't light them all time. You just
No,
lit them
we
on
would-
Christmas or the night
We
before.
would light them, periodically.
I
To
see.
watch them too,
I see.
didn't you?
And watch them while they were lit.
Would you go buy a tree or go cut
we'd go out
one on
and
the
cut.
farm?
We'd go out and
somewhere?
cut one.
Right.
Go out and cut one.
There was cedars on their farm, you know.
And
Uh-huh.
basically, I guess that's
Your favorite memories?
Well,
probably so.
well, that's good. We mentioned this about Christine. I faintly remember Christine because I was old enough, and indeed, you all lived in the same house with us at what we call the grief place.
I remember that.
For a little while, I don't know. It could have been only months, but I remember a little bit of that. And I don't know how long after that, maybe not long, too long after that, the accident happened. And why don't you run through that and tell it from your perspective as being there and what have you? Okay.
Well, this happened August the 22nd, 1944. That's Rob Roy Ramage's birthday, too.
Well,
But see, Hilton was in service, and Christine had Leon and Linda. They were 4 and 2.
Hilton was her husband.
Yes, Hilton Story was her husband.
Right.
And Hilton being in service, Mama and Papa wanted me to be with Christine and her children a lot. And we lived in Oakdale, and she did too. And I just stayed almost all time with her. I'd go home, stay a night or two, and then I'd go back and stay with she and the children. So this, the day this happened, we'd spent the night before with Mr. and Miss Tommy Roberts. That was our brother Lee Ray's first wife, Ernestine. That was her parents.
Right.
And they had another daughter, Jackie. And we'd spent the night with them just to be having fun. You know, Jackie was a teenager. And we went home to Christine's to get, Jackie drove a car, and we went over to Oakdale to get our bathing suits. We were going swimming in the river. And we went and got the bathing suits, and we were coming back, crossing the railroad at there, I don't know how to describe that, but from Woodlawn coming over to the Clarks River Road.
It's kind of the extension of Oaks Road. I don't know what the name of the street
don't
is
either.
now. It's going to be replaced by a new street anyway.
That's right.
Now.
But it was over there where Farmer's Market, was there right close to
Right,
it.
right.
But anyway, at that time in 1944, there was a passenger train came out of Paducah a little after 11. And we were approaching...
This in the morning, of course.
Yes, in the
Yeah,
morning.
since you weren't
And
smoking.
we were approaching the railroad crossing, And we knew that train always came. And I really think I said to them, I said, it's about time for that. We called it the dinner train, I think.
Well,
And Jackie was driving, and she looked down the track, and she saw the train coming, and of course Christine and I did too. And Leon and Linda were standing up in the back seat of this old car. It was an old car. I don't know what model it was, but it didn't even run real well. And we looked and saw the train, and Jackie, I think she got scared, but anyway, the car stalled on the track. And as Christine and Jackie and I got out, and Christine ran to the front of the car to try to push it off the track. Well, Leon and Linda were standing in the back seat, all the way back, looking out, the window. And Leon was on the side I was on, so I reached over the seat. It was just a 2-door car, and I got Leon and got him out, and I ran from the track.
right.
And Christine went to get Linda, but see, if she had not taken time to push the car,
She
we
would have
think
been
she
able to
could
get
have
out.
gotten away.
Right.
But it took that much more time.
Right.
And the train hit her, and she was pinned between the front door and the seat on the inside. And she had Linda in her arms like this, and it carried that car down the railroad. Oh, I'd say it was probably a block or more before it could get stopped, the train. It was behind Lake Edwards Restaurant there, Country
Right.
Castle.
Right.
And so I had Leon, and of course I went hysterical, I know, and went running down the track, and some lady that lived at Woodlawn took Leon out of my arms and says, I'll take care of this child. She knew us.
Well,
So I went on to the train, and when I got there, Lake Edwards had come up from his restaurant, and they got Christine and carried her down the bank to his restaurant where his car was, and I went with them. They had Linda Lou, but they handed her to me. She wasn't hurt,
well,
and she was kind of, crying,
Right.
but she wasn't really hurt. So of course, she knowing me, I was, so close to her, she began to reach for me. And I took her, and we rode in the car with Christine laying in the back seat, and a woman went and held Christine's head. And I was in the front seat with Lake Edwards with Linda Lou. And we went to the old Illinois Central Hospital, I guess one reason because it was a railroad accident,
Right.
And when we got there, well, they put Christine in a wheelchair instead of laying her down. And I told him, I know I got, kind of hateful because I
Right.
said, I want you to lay her down. I said, she's hurt real bad and she doesn't need to be sitting up. So they did lay her down, and she began to make a terrible loud noise like screaming. And when Mom and Papa got to the hospital out on Broadway, and that hospital's way back off the street, but of course there was no air conditioning, the windows were open, but Mom and them heard Christine's voice when they got out of the car. But it was not like she was in pain, it was like it was fear, and we think that was what was at the time when the train was coming and striking her or something.
right.
But she lived just a little while after Mom and Papa got there, and she died.
Well,
And she was 22 years old, and she had Leon and Linda. He was 4 and she was 2.
well. Had she
So
said...
that's the worst thing I've ever had to face
I
in my
can
life.
imagine. I can imagine that for years, and maybe still.
It still is, really.
I understand that perfectly. Did she know anything? Was
No,
conscious? She never said
never
any
did.
words.
But when we were going to the hospital and going down the Bridge Street going into town, I looked back and there was blood coming out of her nose and her mouth.
Right.
And I said, she's not going to make
No.
it. And the lady said to me, that was holding her head, she said, oh, she'll be all right. But she was consoling me.
Right. Right.
But Linda Lou didn't, she might have had a few bruises, but her skin was not even cut. And she went all the way through that wreck.
Well.
Christine had her like this.
Protecting her. When the train hit the car, was it on the same side that Christine was?
Yes.
Oh, it was. It hit her.
It pinned her
Right.
between that door.
Right.
And she had a cut on her arm that made me think that it was probably like the latch thing of the car door, because see, she was on the inside there
She
where
had
the
gotten
train
in the
pushed
car
that.
almost completely.
Well, she was
when
leaning over but had the door open.
I
See,
see.
she was leaning over to get
Partly
Linda.
in and
So
partly
she's
out.
partly in and out, but when the train hit the door, it pinned her some way
Gotcha.
there too,
Right,
you
I
know.
see. How far down the track do you recall, or you may not recall clearly, was it when you first appeared to be going to have a problem? Was it sort of way down there or not? Now, there were no gates
No,
or
not even
signals
no,
of any kind.
Just said
then.
railroad, you know,
Right,
to cross.
Right, and it was sort of difficult because you came up on those tracks. And it was kind of hard to see down them, maybe.
Yes.
Until you
it
got
seems
up
like
there.
it was pretty good view, really,
was.
Richard. But the train, see, was so fast, and the man,
Oh,
the
I see,
engineer.
because it was a passenger train.
Yes, and the
was,
engineer told us we had to go to the courthouse, and they had a hearing or something.
I see.
And I had to, tell them my
I
experience.
see.
And the engineer said he was running behind schedule, and he had picked up. He told that he was even going faster than usual. And that really
I see.
did, it really got there in a hurry when we saw it. And I'd say it was down past Old Benton Road crossing probably when we saw it, because Christine
see.
went to the front of the car and
Right.
then went to get Linda.
Right. It was coming out of Paducah and going
Going
up toward Reedland
East,
and past.
going to Louisville.
Right.
It was a passenger train.
Well, that was traumatic for not only you, but for the whole family.
Oh, yes.
It was awful.
When I think about Mom and Papa, now that I'm a mother, a parent,
Right.
I think about them, giving up Christine, and also that her having those two small children. That was even still harder.
Yes. Yes.
But Mama and Papa came through that and weathered it pretty good, really. I would have thought Mama might have almost had a nervous breakdown or
Right.
something, but she didn't. She
Well.
was strong.
Right. Well, she could be, and she was.
She was.
Right. And she needed to be. Well, that's good. Now let's update a little bit more to where we are now, and we can pretty soon start wrapping it up. You retired a few years ago, John, but you didn't really retire.
No,
You retired from one job and started
I
working at
retired from
another
SKW when I was 58.
one. Uh-huh.
I went to work before too long, I went out to Lyon County Housing and maintenance superintendent and worked out there a few years, and then I completely quit.
Retired.
Retired from that kind of work. Now you raise sunflowers and tomatoes and
Well,
every other thing.
I do a little something all the time, but I try to have something to do, but I want something that I can do when I want to do it.
Something you enjoy.
I think we need to tell that we lived 20 years, see, up on Lake Barkley at Catawba.
Right.
And Suzanne and Dick and Alan were here at Paducah after Alan, before Alan was born, before he was born, Richard, Suzanne and Dixie got jobs in Paducah
I see.
and came here.
What?
And then we'd been on the lake 20 years almost, and we'd gotten to where we didn't use our boat. We'd lost interest in fishing, and we thought we'd stay there the rest of our life when
Right.
we built that home.
Right.
And we enjoyed it, but we got to where we didn't use the water, and the yard was real steep.
I see.
And so one day I said to John, I think it's time for us to leave this place. And he says, I've been thinking the same thing. So we told Suzanne and Dick that we were going to try to come back down here to McCracken County. And we looked for property to buy, to build, but we wanted out here near them because we were thinking about we're getting older all the time.
Right.
So one day they came up to our house and they said, well, let us tell you what. We want you to buy a double wide and put it on our land, and you'll be near us. And we looked and all and decided that's what we wanted to do, and we're so happy, and we're right
Great.
here on their property
Right.
where they live too,
Right.
Suzanne, Dick, and Alan.
That's good. And you've been here about, what, 4 or 5 years?
5 years.
Yeah,
5 years this past April.
good. Would there be anything you would change if you could go back and do all this over for
I don't think so.
69, 73 years?
No.
I don't know that.
The only thing, I wouldn't have that tragedy, of course. you
No,
know.
but I mean
But
controllable
not in our
things.
life and all.
Things that you could
Yes.
change, that, you go to a certain point and you say, well, we could have done this or we could have done that, but you don't see any major changes you would make.
No, and John always says he never looks back.
That's good.
He's always said that.
That's
He
good.
said when you make a decision, then live with it.
Excellent.
No, I never look back.
That's good.
But we've always been happy everywhere we went, like I said, because there's good people everywhere you go.
Right. What's the future? Right here?
Uh-huh.
Right here.
Right here.
Right here.
Until the good Lord calls us home.
See, I don't have any family left.
Well,
I got some nephews,
One niece.
one niece, but we near all of Arminda's people. We enjoy it.
John enjoys my family a lot, and they're his family too, you know.
good.
But his mom and John lost a brother, a sister, and his mother in less than 2 years, and that left him alone then.
Right. Well, that's
I think it's time to turn the air
a
conditioner
good.
on.
I think it is too. That's a good report. Do you have any song to sing or anything?
No
We
songs.
No
don't sing
song.
very well.
No song, no
I li-
poems, no more stories, huh?
No, no more stories.
Okay.
I like to make a happy noise, you know, when singing in church. I say, make a joyful noise unto the Lord. That's what I do.
Yeah.
I'm not really a singer, but I do make a joyful noise anyway.
We appreciate this.
Yes, we do, Richard.
Well,
and Don.
we enjoy it, and we've done now. This is the completion of all of my uncles and aunts.
I
all
thought
of
it
them.
would be maybe.
All of them. You were the last because you were the youngest.
Uh-huh.
And I worked on the ones who were older intentionally first.
That's
and I got
right.
some great uncles and great aunts.
Okay.
Like Pete and Golda.
Good.
And WD and Violet. I got them too.
okay.
So,
Did you get one of Pete?
yes.
You did?
Yes, not an awful long time before he died.
I was
we got
thinking
that.
so, because I think I saw it out at Randall and Martha's one
Really?
time when we were out there for the reunion.
Well,
Went in the
They-
house and saw it, you know.
they become more valuable.
Sure they do.
Right now, it's no big thing because people can talk to you and they
That's
can
right.
know these stories. But 10 years from now, 20 years from now, they won't be
That's
able to.
true.
So it will be more valuable then.
Yes.
Thank you very
We
much.
sure thank you all.
Thank you.
Okay, there you go.
That's mighty nice of you all to do this.
Well done, Lex.
It's a lot of work, really, Richard.
Get 'em?
Sort of took over there.